Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody, and good evening, everybody. And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a very special day, a very special training for you because of your hard work. And I can't wait to get on with today's agenda. My name is Gavin Healy. I look after global marketing across the world, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce this call. And I'm just going to run you a special video. A special call needs to start with a special video. And this is for you, all of you. So, as you know, you have all worked very hard, and you've been our top performers in the Healy Coil incentive, and you have won what I can only describe as a true masterclass that you're about to go through with our speaker. Before I do, I just need to present a couple of disclaimers. It's the normal format. Please take a read, just in case you haven't read these before. It's just to comply with local laws and local rules and regulations in your markets. So this is the one for the United States of America, and welcome to everybody from there. Do feel free to say hello and tell us where you're from tonight. We love interactivity. So that's the US one. And then for those of you that are joining from a similar time zone to where we are now, if you'd just like to absorb this notice as well, then we can begin our proceedings. So I will take these off now. I want to welcome to you today. But before I do, I just want to say, this is very special. Please, you worked very hard to win this incentive and win this special training. Please don't film it. Please don't share it anywhere else. It's for your eyes only, as I'm sure James Bond once said in a movie somewhere. It really is, because if you share it, then you've undone all your hard work. So please sit back, enjoy, get a pen and some paper and take some notes, because you're going to have a fantastic training with our guest speaker, who I'm going to bring to you now. Marcus, how are you? Oh, yes, there we are.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm great. I just had to take a curcuma ginger shot because my voice from all the webinars suffered a little, but now I'm absolutely fine. And I'm so happy to be here and to address all of you.
Right, Marcus, I'll hand it over to you. Just let me know when you would like us to start with the slides.
All right. Yes, it's a wonderful opportunity for me, because I'm given 2 hours time to speak to you, and this is a great pleasure. Normally on Frequency Fridays, there's just 15 minutes, and we can just scratch the surface. And this is exactly the right format, because you, almost 400 of you, have qualified through really a great endeavor, and I think in the March of April in the coil promotion. Not only, yes, giving so many people the opportunity to use Healy for themselves, to benefit from it, to connect to the information field, and to bring us closer to our dream of 1 billion people on the planet using the Healy, because one Healy will be used by a whole family. So this is our goal, because we know this is even more than the critical mass which we need to really make a impact, a very positive impact on humanity and on the consciousness of humanity. I'm so much convinced about this, and therefore I'm so happy to see our network growing and getting stronger by overcoming challenges and obstacles. And yes, everything is developing in such a wonderful and dynamic time. This dynamics which we see now in Healy world is it's so wonderful to see, but sometimes in such a dynamic situations, we don't have time to go deep, to really look behind, I would say, the sales surface or the marketing surface, where we have nice brochures and short videos, but really take the time to go deeper, to try to understand more than you need for just presenting Healy to others. So I'm very thankful for having this 2 hours, and it's about nothing else than the Healy coil. And so I start this presentation on the Healy coil with using the Healy in a completely different way, means in a very classical way. You see, this is not headphones, but this is applicators which transfer the microcurrent through the ear labs, because I had a little dizzy feeling before this webinar, and I can't put it off now because right now I'm really fine. And just to show you that the Healy coil doesn't replace all the other ways of applying Healy with the cables, with the local electrodes and so on, but it's really something complementary which just allows you to cover the whole range of possibilities, the whole spectrum, the whole spectrum of possibilities, because what Healy can do is like brilliant white light. It contains all the spectrum of light from the infrared, the red, to the yellow, to the green, to the blue, to the ultraviolet. So using the Healy is somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, and I will a little later give you a graphic which shows you what it really means. I can tell you already something. It's bridging a gap. In the middle of our existence as a human being, there's a gap. It's a gap between the material and the immaterial. And the coil is exactly there to bridge this gap between the material, which is our body, which is our even the subtle electromagnetic fields on the material side. But we are not just a material being, but we are also a spiritual being. We are a being in the subtle realm. And actually we are much more real in the subtle realm than we are here on this material level. I would even say that this material level is something like a double from the subtle level, or the subtle level which we call the information field. And between these two large areas of existence, you can say the area of spirit, which is close to information, and the area of matter, which is close to energy or connected to energy. There's a gap. There's a gap, and this gap is the quantum level. And this needs to be bridged. And the Healy coil intends to bridge this. And I will give you much more detail about this today. And I think we have 3 parts of the lecture. The first lecture will give you a little more detailed insight into the Healy coil study, which we have done. The second part will give you a deep dive into the quantum theory, or the quantum theory behind. That's what I'm normally not doing, but we'll talk about the double slit experiment and what does it mean, the principle of complementarity, and how it leads to a very specific, I would say, world miracle of quantum physics that is behind the Healy coil. And in the third part, I like to give you practical hints, practical tips, how you can work day to day with the Healy coil. So that's the idea. And again, before starting going deep, I again like to really thank you for your endeavor and also congratulate you for this endeavor, which you have so successfully done in the month of April, and qualifying for the coil. I think what I heard is the coil is really on the way to you. Most of you will receive it, but some of you have already received it. So hopefully right after this webinar, you will be able to start using your Healy with a coil, which is so beautiful, compact. Yes, again, congratulations for qualifying in this Healy coil promotion. And yes, now we start. And I would like to ask Devin to share my presentation with everyone. So the good news is that you can use the Healy coil almost in the same way as you used the Healy with the cables. It's the same frequencies. It's even the same frequencies programs which we are using. We are just switching to a different medium for transporting the frequencies to our organism. That's the only difference, because using the Healy with the cables, which sometimes is like cable salad, so it's not always easy, but it's doable. We are using electrical current as a medium. And electrical current is a wonderful, extremely wonderful medium, because in this level of microcurrent, using the local electrodes or the wrist band electrodes, 10 exponent 18 electrons in a second are moving through our body and reaching so many of our cells and inspiring the cells with flowing charge. So we have talked about this. We have talked about the cell membrane potential model. I don't have to repeat this here. Probably most of you know it. And this is a great feature of the cable electrodes. But we know what we are really looking for is the effect of the frequency. And the frequency can also be transported to our organism with a different medium. So the Healy coil is using a very, very, very special medium on which the frequencies are modulated on. So there is an energy output from the frequency generator and the amplifier of the Healy. So this energy output flows through the double coil, which is within our Healy coil. It's not one coil, it's two coils on each side of the Healy coil, and they are connected in the middle. And in this way, they are creating something which I like to call the quantum potential. So the carrier of the frequencies in the special case of the Healy coil is the quantum potential, and therefore I like to call them quantum potential frequencies. I just need now 5 seconds to close the window because somebody started to cut their grass. I'm just back. So that's great. I'm sitting now here in a small house at a beautiful lake in northern Germany, and the sun is reflecting on the water, and I see the beautiful trees here in the nature. And so that's really inspiring. But now my main attention is with you. My main intention is with all of you. So it's a different medium which we are using, and it's called the quantum potential. There are different names in physics for this medium. Another name would be the magnetic potential, because it originates from two magnetic fields which are nullified. So it's a nullified field. What does it mean? That it's a field which doesn't apply a force anymore. So it's not really working on the material level. But there is something remaining. When the magnetic fields are nullified, there is a potential behind, which is called the magnetic potential, or another term for it is the vector potential. Because this potential is a vector. It has 3 components, x, y, and z. It's a spatial vector, whereas behind the electrical field is a so-called scalar potential. Behind the electrical and magnetic field, there is a scalar potential and there's a vector potential. In the scalar potential, so-called scalar waves are propagating. And in this vector potential, it's vector waves. So scalar waves and this kind of vector waves are very close connected. And because they mainly act on the material, on the quantum level, and I will tell you in a few minutes what it means, I like to call them quantum waves, or waves in the quantum potential. And this is also a very well-defined physical term, which goes back to one of the greatest physicists of the last century. It's no one else than David Bohm, who Albert Einstein considered to be something like his spiritual son, and I will tell you more about David Bohm and his amazing insights into the deeper nature of quantum reality. So we are using quantum potential frequencies with the Healy coil, and so the electrical frequencies and the quantum potential frequencies, they complement each other in a wonderful way. So before starting going deeper, I will give you some numbers, because whenever we come up with a new product, we are intending to do a similar study as we have done it now. It's a very simple, but it's a very clear study design which we are applying. And the next study which we are going to do, starting very soon in June, will be a study on the effect of the resonance module. It will have the same structure. So this is a structure which we have developed with a large team of researchers, inclusive two experts in clinical studies, Professor Harald Wallach, who was a professor also for clinical studies, and he has more than 500 publications on his names. Most of them are studies, and he is right now going to publish this study also in a scientific journal. So it's a so-called randomized controlled trial, RCT. And if you look through, if you're looking through the scientific literature, you will find out that this RCTs, this randomized controlled trials, they are a very, very important basis of substantiation or verification of interventions or treatments or whatever thing you want to validate. So it's called randomized because the participants are not handpicked, but they are chosen randomly. So a few thousand people have applied to participate in this trial, but we beforehand had a protocol fixed and also kind of certified, which said we will take 300 participants only and divide them into 3 groups. And also this division of the 300 who were selected randomly into the 3 groups was a random process. So randomly 100 of the 300 were chosen to be in the control group. They had to wait 2 weeks before using and applying their Healy coil. Then there was a second group, and they were using the Healy with the traditional cables. And as we have always done it. And the third group of 100 people, they used the new coil. So there are 3 groups, and there were 2 ideas behind it. We wanted to see if there is effect, if there is an effect of the Healy coil on the well-being of the people compared to a group of 100 people who don't use the Healy coil. But we also wanted to know, how does the Healy coil perform compared with the Healy with the cables? So to get all this information out, we need 3 groups: a coil group, a Healy group, and a control group. And this is a first graphic, because we have had 5 different kind of questionnaires to be filled out. And this is the so-called MIMOP. MIMOP means that we ask the people for the 3 main concerns which are troubling their well-being, like burdens on their well-being. And we ask before and after how much they feel disturbed or being burdened by these 3 concerns. So we see here in the control group, there is a blue bar. The blue bar means there is and it's a little higher than the pink bar. The pink bar is after using, after this 2 weeks period, and the blue bar is before. It's initial, and this is after 2 weeks. So in the control group, the burden on the well-being slightly decreased. It's not statistically relevant, as you see with these little bars here, but it slightly increased. So the group was a little better, very slightly better. So there was nothing happening, but this 2 weeks somehow improved it. Then if we look at Healy, we see there is a big decrease of the burden on the well-being recognized from 18 to 14, whereas the Healy coil decreased also the burden from 19 to 16. So this was the first very nice result, because we saw an effect with Healy and the coil much larger than in the control group. Then there was a second questionnaire on the well-being, which is an internationally recognized questionnaire used in many scientific studies developed by the World Health Organization. And because it contains 5 questions, it's called WHO 5. So here's something interesting happening. In the control group, the well-being within 14 days decreased. So we can learn from this that doing nothing for your well-being is not a good strategy. You might not feel better after 2 weeks, or even worse than before. So we have to do something. So what did the other 2 groups do? They applied either the Healy with cables or with a coil. And you see in both cases from above 12 to above 16, a wonderful increase in the sense of well-being, which was very clear compared to the control group, which even decreased. Wonderful results. Here we applied a third questionnaire, which we developed ourselves to ask for coherence. And we have the same picture, a decrease in the control group and a good amount of increase within the 2 weeks of applying the coil and applying the Healy. So it's really showing each of the 5 approaches in the study showing a very clear result. Here we also see how successful the people estimated the application of Healy. The control group is something like a 0 level. No success because they didn't do anything, but the Healy and the coil have almost 10 points higher score than the control group. And there's, I think, a last one, which is a self-assessment of the MIMOP part, which is the concerns which are burdening you. And here we are asking on how successful they felt the application of Healy and coil in this regard, and you see the same result. And you see already the bar of Healy is slightly higher than the bar of coil. And therefore, in the end, we want to really have numbers. We want to compare the numbers, not just pictures. Sometimes pictures are suggestive. So yes, that's the question of Anthony. Yes, the Healy in the study is using cables, and the other Healy in the study is using the coil. So these 2 different applications of Healy are compared to each other, but they're also compared to the control group, which did no intervention. So it's a randomized controlled trial. So there is an international effect size measure parameter called D. It's called Cohen's D because Cohen suggested it in 1988, and he said that between 0.2 and 0.5 of this statistical parameter, it's considered a small effect. Below 0.2, you can say it's no real effect there, but between 0.2 and 0.5, it's a small effect. Then, if it's larger than 0.5 up to 0.8, you have already a substantial middle large effect. But then if the D is bigger than 0.8 up to 1.0, it's a large effect. Wonderful. But then everything beyond 1, it's considered to be a very or even a very, very large effect. So I asked Professor Wallach, actually I didn't ask him, I asked the supervisor of this study, what kind of effect would he expect? And he said, okay, it's a bioenergetic device. So I've seen many bioenergetic devices performing not so badly. Normally the effect size in coherence D is between 0.4 and 0.6. So expect to be somewhere between, in the middle of a small effect and the middle large effect. Somewhere here around 0.5, you can expect your result, because, as he said, he has done many trials with bioenergetic devices. So in the beginning, he couldn't really distinguish between the Healy and other bioenergetic devices. But now, after, I think, almost 3 months of cooperation, he now really understands how Healy functioned. And I just received today the first draft of his paper, which he wrote about the study. And he is going to submit it next week to a very good scientific journal for publication. Let's see if they accept it. Otherwise, because he has published so many study papers, he will place it somewhere else. It depends on how it fits to the to the topic of the journal. So let's see how the results were. We were really how to say, gespannt. We were really looking forward to see the results, to get the first results of the study, because for ourselves we said, if this study is not successful, even we announced it, we will not launch the Healy Coil, and this would be an unbearable situation. And I mean, how couldn't we launch it? So we are kind of depending on the study to have a good result, but we were so convinced that we didn't really doubt it. But still, doing it and then having it black on white or in another color on white, it's a different thing. It's a different feeling. So let's see. Here we see the numbers. Coherence D for the 5 different approaches which we had: the well-being questionnaire, the coherence questionnaire. Remember the MIMOP questionnaire about the burdens to the concerns, and then 2 self-assessment questionnaires in the end. So let's see. Here we have Healy. How did Healy perform compared to the control group? On the well-being score, it's 1.3. This is really a very large effect. And you see that the coil performed similar, 1.25 almost. It's a little below, but it's so small, the difference, that we can say, okay, Healy performed a little better, but it's so small, too small to say if it's just by chance. Then we have, in the MIMOP, we don't have such a big score. Here we really just have a small effect. But in the self-assessment of the MIMOP, we have almost 1, so something between a large and a very large effect. And for the coil, we have 0.88. So the MIMOP is a little weaker than the well-being and the coherence score. I mean, the coherence score is also amazing, 1.26 compared to 1.16 with the coil performance. Amazing. The biggest result we have in the self-assessment of the coherence after 2 weeks, which is almost 1.7, almost 1.6 with the coil. This is really very much surprising or unexpected results. Even for Professor Wallach, who said this is really surprising and amazing, and he expressed this also in the article which I just got in my hands today. Yeah, a great result. But now let's look at how does the coil perform towards the Healy, compared with the Healy. So we, in all the 5 parameters, we have a small but positive effect of the Healy. So the Healy performs slightly better, but the effect is really small. See, coil Healy for the well-being score, it's 0.04. And the MIMOP score is 0.1. At 0.2, a small effect starts. So this is really like tiny effect is there. And because the Healy was better in all 5 categories, we take it serious. We say, okay, there's a tiny quantitative advantage of the Healy with the cables towards the Healy with the coil, but it's not really important if the effect is like this or like this. Doesn't make a difference. But I think that in quality there is an effect, and a difference. And I will talk later about. Someone asked, what is MIMOP? MIMOP is a abbreviation of a more complex term, which means that it's a measure of the burden which you experience on your well-being from your concerns. So everyone was noting down 3 concerns which disturb his well-being. And then he had to evaluate each of them, how much you feel right now the burden of it. And then the same after 2 weeks. And you see how much this burden, according to the self-assessment, decreased. Healy against control is almost Cohen's D1. And here it's Cohen's D 0.9, so really large effect. Whereas in the other estimation of the MIMOP, we have just a small effect, but there seems to be an effect. So that's enough with the numbers, because I did not just believe in the coil before getting it developed and produced, but I knew from my experience in the time weaver times, where we have also used different sizes of bifilar coils according to the developments of Nikola Tesla. And from the feedback which we got from our users, especially with animals, we were already very confident. We were so confident that we went into this risk, because if you would have waited with the production until the study is completed, you could receive the coil for Christmas. And we didn't want to do this. So let's go directly into the Healy coil and look a little more into how it works. So in the beginning, I might explain some things which you have already heard, but it's important as a basis. So we call it QPF, quantum potential frequency, because if you talk about a frequency, you shall always ask, what is the substance or the medium which vibrates? So a frequency is never just an entity on itself, by itself, but it's a measure of the vibration of a certain medium. So here it's not an electrical medium, but originally it's a magnetic field. And here we have used a very sensitive sensor for small magnetic fields to measure the field of the coil. So what we did is we first measured one layer of the coil, and then we measured another member of the coil, and each of them produced a small but significant magnetic field. But then if you put them very closely together, they cancel each other, they nullify each other. In each point you have one magnetic field vector from the upper coil, but you have another magnetic field vector pointing towards the opposite direction from the other coil, from the lower coil, so that the result is 0 in each point. And that's amazing. Magnetic field is 0. It's null. Null Tesla. Tesla is the international measurement unit of the magnetic field. So that doesn't mean there is nothing which acts, but there is nothing which acts in a way material by grabbing the charge or applying a charge on the particle. But what is there? What is left? According to the theory of electromagnetic dynamics from James Clerk Maxwell, according to the Maxwell equations and the mathematics around, there is a field behind the electric and magnetic field. And this field is called the potential. Potential already shows you that it's not a material field in itself, but its nature, it's more informational. The magnetic field is material because from the magnetic field you have vectors which actually mean a force vector, which is changing the acceleration of a particle. Whereas the potential behind doesn't activate a force on the particle. It's not a force, so it's not a direct material influence. So how does it influence? How does it influence matter going through such a potential? Remember, it can be called magnetic potential or vector potential, but I like to call it quantum potential because this is how David Bohm called this, what he called implicit order, this information field behind matter, which actually controls the movement and the interference of material objects on the quantum level. So the Healy coil, if you start it, I have just started it now, it uses quantum potential, which has a certain shape, like on this picture, which you're seeing coming up from the coil in this direction, but also in the opposite direction. So you need to always keep it close to your body so that the quantum potential actually sticks in your body and it resonates with the quantum potential of all the constituents of your system. So, and in order to explain you on which level I believe that the coil works, and please understand what I am telling to you now is not the standard version of orthodox science, of quantum physics, but it's more like emerging science which have been developed by geniuses like David Bohm, who was Einstein's protege, who's recognized as a great physicist on his own standing, but there are many other names around which I could mention here who have developed this notion of a less material information field behind the material surface. So that is what I always try to convey, that the world which we see is something like an explicit order. It's an order which presents itself to our consciousness through different sensual inputs. But behind this order is a more holistic order which connects the different elements and parts of the external reality. So the implicit order behind the explicit order, or the quantum potential behind the molecular and atomic level, contains much more hidden relationships of reality. It contains all the subtle networks of causation in reality, which we can never understand and never find if we are just looking at individual parts of reality. Even if we look at the quantum properties of a physical element or a molecule or a crystal of something else, if we look just at the quantum qualities and interactions of a single individual quantum object, we can just understand this object in direct interrelationship with its closest environment. Because the quantum effect, when the quantum object interacts with a complex environment, gets lost in all the different relationships. This is called quantum decoherence. A quantum object is always coherent. It contains its own information. It's very clear as a unit. But as soon as it interacts with so many different neighbors, piece by piece, the information gets lost. And therefore, most scientists are of the opinion that quantum effects always only affect the micro level. But that's the good news. in the last decades, more and more macroscopic quantum effects have been found. This means quantum effects which are covering large areas of the material reality, like, for example, large areas in our body, few centimeters, up to 20 centimeters, we find oscillations which are correlated very mystically. And with even applying quantum theory just for itself, we cannot understand how cells within a range of a few square centimeters, how they can all be related to each other in such a way that they oscillate together, that they are forming something what we call, as we call it, coherent domains. So here I want to show you an experiment which has originally been done around 220 years ago by, I think it was Thomas Young, who first time performed the double slit experiment with light. So the double slit experiment says that light is shining at an obstacle which has two slits through which the light can pass through. And then that time already the idea was that light propagates as waves. And here we see the blue area is a wave picture. And here you have 2 points which corresponds to the two slits from where two individual waves of light expand into the space behind the slits. This is like throwing 2 stones simultaneously into the water, and each of them creates a ring of waves. And these 2 rings of waves start to interfere with each other. And here at the screen in a distance from the 2 slits, you find the result how these 2 waves are interfering with each other. So in the end, you find places where you see a lot of light, and then there are dark areas where no light hit the screen. And even in this bright areas, we have small interruptions of black lines. So it's a typical interference pattern, which is a result of the wave nature of light. So the same experiment has been later done around the time of Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg in the early 20s of the last century with electrons. Electrons were supposed to be particles. Only they are particles. So electrons being shot, and I show you the experiment. Electrons are shot by an electron gun, again on an obstacle with 2 slits. And from there, they are passing on to a screen. And this was a surprise. They're creating the same interference pattern as if they would be waves. And this was the first very clear hint that electrons were not just the small particles like small billiard balls flying through the air with the electrical charge and with their mass. They were always considered to be particles, but they actually, in certain circumstances, they're behaving as waves and they're creating interference frings. So from this experiment, Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg, they got the very clear picture that matter is always simultaneously has a particle nature, but it also has a wave nature. But these 2 natures contradict each other. Particle means it's here at this point with its qualities like mass and charge and nowhere else. If you find a particle at a certain point, it means it's not there in any other points in the universe. And for the wave, it's opposite. A wave is spreading through space. It's not at a specific point, but it's spreading like waves expanding into space. So how can we understand these two qualities of matter together? We cannot, because Niels Bohr said it's completely different perspective to see the one object, an electron, an elementary particle, an atom. Each of them has a particle nature. If you look at it as a particle, and it exhibits a wave nature if you look at it as if it would be a wave. So this different kind of perspectives are different kinds of experiments which we can do. So, but then if you ask the ontological question, okay, that's perspective, but what is the electron really? What it is in reality? Is it a small particle or is it a wave? Because very difficult to think that it's a wave and a particle simultaneously, and therefore Niels Bohr, to solve the conflict, introduced the term of complementarity. Complementarity is a kind of escape from the contradiction. It's a unification of the opposites. Actually, it's something like an alchemist's process to overcome. It's called in alchemy, it's called the coincidentia oppositorum, also the unification of the opposites. That's a very, very important step which I did in physics, because it allowed mysticism to enter into physics. It's a very mystical understanding of reality, where you actually don't understand reality itself, but you just understand how we can perceive reality. And many physicists like Albert Einstein and Erwin Schrödinger and de Broglie and so many others, they said, this cannot be the true description of reality. We need to define reality in clear terms. We cannot leave it unqualified and just talk about our experience or our knowledge of reality. Anyway, looking back at this experiment, we have an electron gun, and an electron gun doesn't have to shoot many electrons at once, but it can shoot one electron after the other. And imagine, and that's really fascinating, even if you emit one electron after the other, each of them passing through one of the slits and then hitting the screen, it still creates electron by electron the same interference pattern. And that's amazing, because you would think if I send a single electron, it has to either pass here or there, but if it passes here or there, each of the electrons by themselves individually after each other, they will not cause such an interference pattern. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense because the understanding is that if one electron is emitted by the electron gun, it will behave like a wave. As long as nobody tries to catch it at a certain point by shooting high energy photons on it or something else to localize it, then it passes through both slits simultaneously. Again, how is it possible? In the particle picture, it's not possible that one particle passes through both slits individually, but the wave can. So in a wave picture of the electron, from each of these point-like slits, a separate wave or wave function, as it's called in quantum physics, starts. This wave function is called C1, and this wave function is called C2. So, and these two wave functions meet and interfere with each other on each point of the screen differently. In the center of the screen, the path from here of electron wave 1 and the path from here of electron wave 2 has the same length. And because it has the same length, imagine like the waves coming in, they come together at the screen with the same phase. So now we need to understand, and that's very important, what is a phase. I think my face is right now shining because the sun is setting, it's very closely above the lake, and the whole lake is like burning fire. So I hardly see the screen anymore. That's fun, but I better close the jalousine of the picture of the window. Just 1 second. Okay. Okay, now I have also small. Now this is a multi-slit experiment, and I have all these points of light on my face. Okay, now it's better. So what? Yes, I wanted to think. Let us think deeply about what is a phase. And that's so important because this is a quantum feature of reality, which makes such a difference if you're not looking just at one particle or two or three, but looking at hundreds and thousands and millions and trillions of particles forming macroscopic matter, or molecules in our brain, or water molecules in our body. Then we need to understand what is a phase. A phase is important if we see two. Oh, Gavin, can you give me back the full picture just shortly of myself?
Just one moment, sorry, Marcus. I'm just answering questions while we're doing this at the same time.
Yes, I saw the chat and I was always intrigued to yes, thank you. I always wanted to answer the questions, but simultaneously concentrate on all these good questions and on the lecture. So if we look at these two waves of the electron, on the one side, one is vibrating, and on this other side, the other is vibrating. And normally they are not correlated. They can vibrate even if they're vibrating with the same frequencies, like in the case of the electrons. The phase can be different. So the phase is the difference of when they reach the top. For example, when this wave, number one on the left side, reaches the top, the other is still going up. And when it reaches the highest point, the other is already down. And so they are have a certain phase shift. It's a difference of phase. And this difference of phase is so important because according to the difference of phase, of the phase angle, we have either constructive interference or destructive interference. In this case, the phase shift is zero because they are coherently vibrating. This is coherence. But in this way, they are vibrating with the same frequency. So frequency is the same, but the phase is a difference of 180 degrees. And in this case, the resulting wave is zero. So this is what we see at the interference screen. And please give me back the presentation. Yes. And therefore, point by point, we either have the nullification of the intensity or a maximum of the intensity, depending on the phase difference. So that's the normal, simple, quantum mechanical double slit experiment as it was done by Niels Bohr. More than 100 years than the first appearance of this experiment by Thomas Young. So, but here, something very special comes in. And this is what is called one of the world miracles of quantum physics by one of these great journals, either Science or Nature called it like this. It's called the Bohm-Aharonov effect. David Bohm, together with a Russian physicist who had a great standing on its own, many great discoveries, they first time developed this thought experiment, and then it was confirmed by many, many real experiments. So what they did is in the middle between the two propagating waves, they place a magnetic field with a considerable strength. But not just a normal field, but putting it in a metal cylinder which will completely shield the field, so that outside the cylinder, for sure, the magnetic field has a strength of zero. So what happens if they put on the magnetic field? If an electron moves within a magnetic field, a force will cause an acceleration and a change of its path. So there will be, we would expect, if the magnetic field is there with a certain polarization, that the result would be strongly disturbed. But because the field is symmetrically shielded and it's zero everywhere where the wave function would propagate outside this unpermeable cylinder, we would expect that nothing will happen with the interference pattern. But in reality, what happens is this: the pattern is slightly shifted to one side, let's say to the left. But then if you switch the polarization of the magnetic field, so you switch the north and the south pole, then the interference pattern is shifted to the other side. And if you continue playing with the magnetic field, you continue shifting the interference pattern. And if you put the magnetic field off, then it again establishes itself in the center. And just from all the quantum effects which were known at the time and which were considered when Bohm and Aharonov came up with this idea, this should not happen. Or the question has to be asked, what acts on the electrons if not the field? And because the field is zero, it is the quantum potential or the magnetic potential, which is called A in terms of in relation to the magnetic field, because this quantum field from which the magnetic and the electrical field emerge into material space, this is not zero, and its effect doesn't depend on its amplitude. So it works even outside the cylinder. And the interesting thing is, this field you cannot measure. You can only measure it by its quantum effects of shifting the phase of the electrons. And this is what it really does. It shifts slightly the phase of this wave propagating into this direction and this phase wave propagating into the other direction, so that in the end, here when it comes to the screen at the same point, there is a phase shift and not anymore zero, so that we in the center don't anymore have the maximum, but we might even have a black spot there. So this is what is really happening. The quantum potential, which we still have if we nullify the magnetic or the electric field, this quantum potential still acts, but on a much more subtle level than the material forces of the magnetic field. It's a more subtle level because it works on the information level of the wave function of the electrons. And now imagine you have this quantum field, or this quantum potential as we call it, vibrating, and it's placed in such a way that it works inside your body, so it resonates with the quantum potential inside your body. So there is a resonance of the quantum fields of your body and the frequency generated here. And all the particles going through this quantum potential are influenced in the same rhythm of the frequency. And this is exactly what we want to achieve. We want to apply the frequencies of the Healy on a deeper level. With the cables, you dominantly apply it on the molecule level and on the level of the electric field, which keeps the molecules together. But with the coil, you go one step deeper to the quantum potential behind, which by its very nature is already as, it's not matter anymore, but what David Bohm called active information. It's active information because, for example, I have great books here. They contain information, but the information is passive. I have to start reading it and translating it into meaning in my consciousness to activate the information. So this field is not passive information, which is just there, but it's acting. It's acting on the molecules and particles of the physical material reality. And therefore, David Bohm called it active information. It's acting on the face of the wave function of the particles. This picture shall give you a visualization of this approach by David Bohm. I call it Bohr versus Bohm. Niels Bohr, you know, he's one of the most prominent fathers of quantum theory. He has developed the wave-particle complementarity idea. So his description of quantum physics is like this, that a quantum system, like an electron, is normally present in space as a wave function, a probability wave. And if you're not looking for where the electron is, it will be smeared over the space in terms of such a probability wave, which will tell you with which probability you find the particle if you look at a certain position. So here we are looking at a certain position. There's a particle 1. We're looking for its position at the time 1, and we find it here, which is the point x1 in space. But shortly before, it was a wave function spread all over the place. And shortly after, it's again another wave function, the red one. Before it was a blue one, afterwards is the red one. But in the moment of observation, where we find it at a certain location, it's a particle. Before it was a wave, and afterwards is a wave. But if we look for a particle, we'll find it. So at the time t1, it's a particle. Around, you have to describe it as a wave function. This picture never satisfied Albert Einstein. He said, that's crazy. This quantum theory is crazy. It's either wrong or it's incomplete. So he had a big quarrel with not with David Bohm, but with Niels Bohr about it continuously, which culminated in 1935 in Copenhagen. And Niels Bohr, he won the public debate on it. But Einstein, in his whole lifetime, he was fighting against this idea because he considered it weird. He said this quantum thing is weird. So David Bohm managed in 1952 to publish an amazing paper where he could overcome this weirdness and came up with a very clear picture, which I like very much. Here we have a particle 1, and at all times t and x, it's a particle which has a certain position and certain properties like mass, like charge. It's always somewhere as a particle, as we expect a particle to be. But simultaneously, there is a quantum potential around it, which is guiding its way through the space and time, through what we see here. He called it a pilot wave. So it's a field, the quantum potential around, which is basically the holistic influence of its whole environment, of the whole universe on the particle. And the particle is guided by this quantum potential wave through a pilot wave of certain frequencies. So here the frequencies come into the game as the pilot wave, which connects the particle to the information of the quantum potential. And it's called pilot wave because it kind of directs the movement of the particles from inside, like a pilot is directing an airplane from inside by using the steering mechanism. But if you look from outside, you say, okay, there is a technical thing, there is a plane, it's moving in an intelligent way. How is it moving in an intelligent way? Is it by chance or is it by some natural laws? But of course, easily we can understand there's a pilot sitting inside. And he's not just flying there, but he's operating and guiding the path of the airplane by the information which he's getting from the airports, from radar stations, and so on and so on. So all the holistic information of his environment is coming together so that he can guide the airplane in a good way without a crash to its goal. So this is a very intriguing picture which contradicts the way how quantum mechanics was explained before, because in the orthodox interpretation of quantum physics, particle is either a wave or the particle, but it's probably none of them in reality. In Bohm's pictures of realism in quantum theory, the material is organized in particles, yes, but they are guided by one holistic field called the quantum potential, which by pilot waves with certain frequencies is guiding the particles on the way through the universe. So it's a very big difference, and I'm very happy with David Bohm's picture coming up, because it distinguishes between an explicit order, which is represented by the particles, the molecules, elementary particles with their forces interacting, and an implicit order in the background, which is a pure quantum field. And its nature, it's active information. And what is information? Information is not matter. Information is more geistig, or it's more logos-like. It's more like, and information has a meaning, so it's almost like spiritual. And I like to call this field, and this you will see in the next slide, because especially in his last decade, David Bohm came up with the idea that even the quantum potential, which you find here in the center around the particle, and this particle just represents the whole world as consisting of particles, that the quantum potential, the physical quantum potential behind, can be again complemented by another implicit order of a super implicit order, which even contains more holistic information, maybe integrating the psychological or the mental contents. And this super implicate order can be complemented by a super to the square implicit order, which contains more and more holistic influences of reality, covering more and more complex networks, also of influence of consciousness. And in this way, David Bohm said there's an infinite series of super implicit orders. And I believe, and I have just written two papers about it. One of them is published in a university journal, and I have just submitted the second paper, from which this picture is a part of, to a journal. And for me, the limit of this, this series of an infinite series of implicit order converges against the information field. So the information field is something like the ultimate border of wholeness. It's the ultimate implicit order, which can never be reached, but it can only be approximated. And there are many details of this theory. I can't really go deeper into it here. So to put everything together, I have created this slide, which you have seen already, but I would like to give an additional detail to it, which is very, very important, which I have never spoken in public about. Just a second, I need another ginger shot. For my voice. Okay, here, what do we see here? We see that we are living in a material world. Like Madonna once had this nice song, I'm a girl in the material world. We all are boys and girls in the material world. At least our body is. And our body is permeated by electrical and magnetic fields and other type of fields, which are still materials. So it's a more subtle, but still material reality, which we find here, and the body embedded in its environment and in the whole universe. But nowadays we know by great researchers like David Bohm or others like Giuseppe Vitiello or Umezawa, this is great quantum field theorists, who have stated that we all have a double in the vacuum state of the quantum fields. It's the zero energy state of the quantum fields in which each of us is projected as an individual entity. And I call this the individual information field. So the individual information field, it's on the quantum field zero energy levels, and this we call the quantum vacuum. I believe that the quantum vacuum, this means the zero energy states of the quantum fields, is the home of what I call the information field. And also the author, Professor Giuseppe Vitiello, of this wonderful book, who almost has the same kind of graphic on the cover, but I just got it 2 weeks ago. It's amazing for me to read it and all the synchronicities of the thoughts of Professor Vitiello and his team with my personal thoughts. I feel it's so encouraging because so many people right now all over the world have the same ideas. I believe there's really a revolution in science going on right now, and the revolution is recognizing the holistic beyond quantum fields which show traces of consciousness and subjectivity. And this is what Professor Vitiello calls your double. I have a slightly different opinion. I believe this double is much more our original self than this projection into matter. I believe that our material body here, that's our double. This is kind of our stuntman. You know, when Sean Connery plays James Bond in the really dangerous, acrobatic scenes where he's jumping from one roof to the other, whatever James Bond is doing, crazy things. In the movie, he's not doing it itself, but there's a stuntman. There's a kind of a double doing it for him. And so I consider this body to be my double, to be my stuntman in this material movie going on, because this is such a dangerous environment. You know, I could fall into the lake. Like a few weeks ago, I decided to take my kayak and take my son and row out into the lake, and it was a nice experience. And we came back, and then afterwards, I decided I will go to swim. Maybe this is 7 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. And I jumped into the lake, and it was so shocking, freezing cold. I mean, undescribable experience. And I just with an unconscious reflex, I managed to get out again. If this would have happened when we were on the lake, I don't know if we would have ever reached the shore again. With a little luck, yes, but sometimes I feel I really need a stuntman in this material world by some really crazy things happening. But actually, the good news is you have a stuntman, and that's your material body, because you are not this physical body. You are not the electromagnetic fields, the aura around and inside the body. And you are not even the quantum processes which connect this material to the immaterial world. But you are much more connected to the individual information field, which is below the quantum fields on the zero energy level of the quantum fields, on the level of the quantum vacuum. And it already contains so many traces of consciousness and subjectivity that we can say it's pure information. And part of this field, I call it the body information field, is directly related to the body. Another is related to the mind or to the soul level. In this, like mind and soul is more like conscious and unconscious experience of the psyche. And they all together make up my personal information field. And this is much more my individual, closer to my real individual identity than this double here in the material world, which even at one point has to die. I know since I'm born that I will never die because I'm a being which has never been born, which is never growing old and which will never die, but the body has to. So there's no good reason why ultimately the information field has to die when the body dies. But there's much more information which I got from my research on this, and I can speak another time about it, because this quantum vacuum states, which contain all the information, all the traces of consciousness and subjectivity, they are also following certain laws, which we can now discover while this great paradigm shift in science is taking place, where these fields are recognized, where the level behind the quantum level is recognized, and where it's more and more recognized that reality and also consciousness is not the information field or the matter, but the interaction between both of them, the interchange. And this interchange between the information field representation of me and the material representation of me, this is life energy, this is chi, this is prana, this is the flow of quantum information happening here in the center as bioenergetic processes or quantum processes. And you see, here there's a gap. And I have purposefully not drawn these two lines as at one line, separating the material from the immaterial, but as a gap. And it's in reality, in physical reality, it's an energetic gap. There's an energetic gap between the vacuum states up here, which are pure information, and the material states, which are excited states containing certain energy. So there's an energetic gap. And the coil, and here we come back to the star of the evening, the Healy coil operating on the quantum potential level is meant to bridge this gap. And this is where the Healy coil is supposed to, or it's designed to operate, because it uses quantum potentials. The quantum potential connects the vacuum states with the electromagnetic fields of our body. So the frequencies of the coil are supposed to bridge the gap between the information field and the material field. So therefore, the coil is of such, in my opinion, of such a central relevance that it's such an important complementation of the cables. The cables are also, together with the Healys, together with the microcurrent frequencies, or as we call it, the microfrequencies, they're also bridging a gap. They're bridging a gap between the molecular body and the electromagnetic fields in the body. So the frequencies, especially the lower frequencies of the Healy applied with the cable, bridging over this gap. This gap is not so severe and so distinguished as the gap between the information area and the material area, but it's still there. So you can say all the three ways how to use Healy, and there are three ways. One is use the cables. I will ever use the Healy with cables every day, because there are certain applications like the one which I just did and others which I would not do with the coil. But the Nunanina programs, the individualized microfrequency programs you can use with the coil. So bridging, and each of this is bridging a gap. The cables are bridging the gap between the molecular and the electromagnetic body. The coil is bridging this important gap between the subtle electromagnetic fields within our body to the bioenergetic field. And the bioenergetic field is the lower part of this vacuum states of the information fields, which corresponds or communicates with the body. But there are other parts. I have already shown you the mind and soul aspects and the integration of body, mind, and soul through quantum entanglements. You can say in more scientific language, conscious, unconscious, and the body united through quantum entanglements in the individual information field. The individual information field is actually embedded in my theory and my model, and that's not only my model, but many others are contributing to this. It's based on Burkhard Heim, and Roger Nelson has the same idea with his global mind, global consciousness. The individual information field, which is always connected to an individual living entity, which is self-referential, self-reflective, which possesses self-consciousness, which is self-organizing and communicates with its environment, using and creating coherent fields and domain within matter. So how do we know that somewhere such an individual information field is active? We can see it empirically, we can measure it nowadays, because whenever coherent domains appear within living matter, we know, oh, here's the effect of the quantum field vacuum, which is related to the information field. So the information field, through the quantum potential, create coherence, they create order. The effect is that they make all the oscillators in reality vibrate along together within one phase, creating amazing effects, especially in our brain. Water is so important. 80, 90, 70, 80, 90% of different parts of our body consist of water. Water is the basis of life. And it's so sensitive for information fields. Professor Giuseppe Vitiello, Umezawa, and Freeman, whom I have talked about a few times already, wonderful researchers, they found that the basis of connecting the quantum vacuum with the dissipative structures in our brain, the molecular structure, is the dipole structure of the water. Water consists of unlimited small dipoles, which are electrically polarized, and each of them is an oscillator, and all of them together are induced from quantum vacuum states to vibrate coherently. And this is what we see in the brain. Whenever a thought comes up, an emotion comes up, we make a decision, or we memorize something, we activate a certain memory. The connection between the quantum vacuum state of our consciousness, our information field, and our memory to the brain needs to be activated, and then coherent domains appear, and you see them very clearly in the EEG. Therefore, in our laboratory here in Castle Kranzlin, we are using also 16-channel EEG system to do this kind of Fourier transformation of complex EEG patterns. If we, for example, apply Healy waves, because they work in the brain also. So the water is so important, and water has dipole structure, and it's organized by this kind of quantum fields. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about something more, because the individual information field is related to an individual living entity. It can be a cell. It can be a cell in our body. It's already an individual living entity. But the whole universe has a double in the quantum vacuum, of course. So there is a global information field within which me with my individual information field and you with your double, your quantum vacuum double, is embedded in. We are all embedded in the global information field, as all the small information fields of my body are embedded within my personal individual information field. And in this way, they work with one purpose. Imagine each of the cells in our body following their own agenda. Oh, this will not end very well. This will be a catastrophe. We would dissolve in all directions immediately. At one point, the cells of our body, they decided, okay, if I want to survive, the best is I serve a higher purpose, an organism which is more complex than me, which has a more developed mind and consciousness as me, because if this body, my host, survives, I will have a great time. I just have to function coherently together with the other. No problem, no problem. My individual information field, be it as small as it is, will be organized together with all the other individual information fields from a higher level of the quantum vacuum, and there the meaning of my existence is embedded. The very meaning of my personal existence, like the meaning of the cell's existence, is embedded already in the information field. It contains so much more than we are conscious about. So much more. And it's so important to touch base with this deep level within us in the quantum vacuum. It's so important. Why? Because our deep purpose, why we are here, what are we supposed to do, where are we going and where are we coming from, this is all memorized on this level. And the purpose of our life manifests, hopefully, in all our actions, and all our deep values are, are based on this deep level. And by contacting the information field, the individual and the global information field, we come closer in contact with ourselves, and we become more conscious of this eternal memory of our life purpose. And this is so important because this is what really will ultimately give us satisfaction. It's not reaching our material goals. It's not earning a lot of money. We all know this. But the deepest satisfaction is if we feel, yes, I'm living exactly my very life purpose, which is larger than me. And I'm not just living for myself, but I'm serving something which is higher than me. I'm serving humanity, and I'm serving the historical development of consciousness on this planet, in this universe, as a small holographic part, which actually simultaneously is just a part, but it's also the whole. So my personal individual information field is a part, it's embedded in the global information field. So here is a third gap. You remember the first gap between the molecular and the electromagnetic body being bridged by the cable Healy applications, and then the gap between the material and the immaterial being grabbed by the quantum potential level of the coil. And the third gap is here between our individual information field and the global information field, which actually contains our destination and the way how we harmonically coexist, and not just coexist, but live together with all the other spirits in this world. And this is the resonance module. The resonance module is designed to bridge the gap between the global information field and the individual information field. And this is one aspect of Healy, which in the future, you can't even imagine how strongly we will develop it. Already this year, you will see there are coming modules of the resonance Healy, how is it called? Healy Advisor analysis app, which go far beyond what you have right now, and will be just an update of the module or an upgrade of the module together with databases. There's so much more, and we have more than 15 years experience with the dynamics of the global and the individual information field. So I believe this gives you a very clear idea, or a clearer idea at least, why we are not just having one approach. Our approach is one, it's Healy, but it can be used in three ways, which are designed to bridge the three most important gaps which we have in the material, which we have between the material and the immaterial, and which we have within the immaterial, bridging from the bioenergetic to the pure information level, or the individual information field to the global information field. I already wanted to say that's it for today, but it's not, and I'm still very good in time.
Marcus, would you like to have another ginger shot before going into the final section?
Yeah.
We've obviously had a lot of questions. I just want to give Marcus a couple of seconds to have a breather, because he's done 2 hours of this intense training this morning as well, and then has gone off into various meetings and things during the day, and he's come back and is in astoundingly good form. So, Marcus, I'll let you get back to it now.
Don't worry. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you. But I announced the third part of this lecture, and this lecture is supposed. Oh, there's a third part of the lecture, but definitely I don't want to trouble you with this today. I just want to give you an idea. It's about the principle, how we bridge from the individual information field to the global information field, or how actually such a bridging on a deep quantum level can be explained. And remember here the three types of bridging. So in such a bridging, information is transported, or in modern terms, we can say it's teleported. And that's not much more as I want to say about it. And I have long discussion with Professor Dr. Harald Wallach about it. And he published many scientific papers and even books about it, applying the principle of quantum teleportation. And there's a lot of theory behind, but today I will just give you the idea that I believe that quantum teleportation of information fields is behind the technology of Healy, but this would be a little too much theory today, would beyond our time limit, so I'm directly jumping to the practical applications of the Helicoid. So let's slow down a little. Now I'm preaching to myself. Because time has to still come back to the presence. And let me just encourage you, the Healy coil can be used as easy as the Healy with the cables. Whatever you know about the Healy with the cables, which programs, which frequencies, how long, how often, you can directly transfer this knowledge to the application of the Healy coil. And as little as you can do wrongly with the Healy, with the cables, as little you can do wrong here. You can't choose really a wrong program. You can't choose a wrong time, but you can optimize probably your personal effect and experience with your Healy by choosing the right programs. So that's an additional way to help you, but you can't do it wrongly. That's really important. But there are additional features of the Healy coil, and one of them is that you can very easily place it. Means you can decide where to directly apply it, whereas with the Healy wristbands, it's absolutely clear. You have them at your arms or other electrodes you put on certain places, but the Healy coil you can place in relation to your energetic informational body. For example, you know, I like to very much wear it here at my shirt. And only after using it for many months already, or years, no, maybe years, yeah, like this, I became aware why I like to use it here, because here is the connection between the brain and the heart. Or you can say the head brain and the heart brain. my head intelligence, and my heart intelligence. So this is the 6th and the 4th chakra connecting, and the connecting chakra is the 5th chakra. I always have little problems with my 5th chakra, and you see it if my voice is going away. It's also related to the 5th chakra. So for me, it's always good to strengthen the 5th chakra. I'm a communicator. I like to communicate with so many people in a day, and so many different kind of people, with our, also with a lot of scientists. So I need to have a strong 5th chakra. So having it here strengthens the 5th chakra, but also strengthens the connection of the 6th, 7th to the 4th chakra. So it's bridging a gap again. So that's a good way to use it at the neck. But you can also very practically, and I like to do this also, use it at the belt. Just fix it at your belt and position it, for example, in the front. So then it is energizing and connecting the 1st and the 2nd chakra. And they are as important as the higher chakras. Many times we are neglecting the 1st and the 2nd chakra, the root chakra, the Muladhara chakra, or the Svadhisthana chakra. Related, and also chakras, this is not just esoteric ideas or traditional ideas from India or China, from the yogis or the Buddhists. No, the chakras correspond to centers of the psycho-neuro-endocrino-immunological system. Don't worry, it took me 2 years to pronounce this term. It's a psycho-neuro-endocrino-immunological system. Because this is what even now orthodox science discovers more and more, that our consciousness, the psyche, is very closely related to our nerves, the neurons, neural system. And the neural system is connected to the endocrine system, means the emission of hormones from our glands. We have the epiphysis, the hypophysis, we have the thyroid gland, we have the thymus gland, and then it goes to the solar plexus, the plexus solaris, which is the nerval grid. And then it goes to the lower level of the endocrine systems. It goes to our sexual glands and to the very important adrenal gland, related to the 1st and 2nd chakra. So if we talk about the chakras, for me, it's just an easy language to talk about these centers of our neural system, which connects to the psyche, and our endocrine system, which is our hormonal system, and to our immune system, because the immune system is modulated through the neural system and the endocrine system. It's all connected. Psycho, neuro, endocrino, immunological system. It's the axis of the 7 chakras as we know them since thousands of years. And therefore, I so much like the 7 programs of the chakra page, because you can apply them very, very universal, because each topic, each issue, each concern is related to one of the 2 chakras. And your Healy, you can place. I can place it, for example, if I have some energy issues or feel some pressure inside or outside my system, or want to harmonize stress, I can just fix it here with one of the knots of my shirt and wear it close to my solar plexus. And then I can run a solar plexus program, but I can also run a stress relief program. I can run a program related to the nerves, or I can run a program like energy, because the plexus solaris is closely related to pressure and energy. So that's a very good way to use the Healy. Find your place. You can also judge according to the meridians or according to the marmas, if you are more into yogic or Ayurvedic knowledge, the marmas and the nadis, or the chakras or the meridians, or wherever you feel you need to apply the frequencies of your Healy. So that's the first point. Use it locally. But be always aware, whenever you use the Healy locally, you apply it to the whole system of body, mind, and soul, because we are overcoming these gaps between the different systems. It's always about bridging gaps. Then you can use it almost continuously to have a deeper connection, just to not just to balance something, but to stay in touch to your double. Actually, this is a double, to your original self in the information field. For this, you can use the Crown Chakra program or the Third Eye Chakra program or just the Being program. And we are in the process to create a new program called Higher Connection. And I believe that's the next thing which we need. We had the Coherence program and we gave it to everyone. And I would like to create this Higher Connection program. And if it's ready, you will be the first people to know it. So then you can use it specifically in meditation, because meditation is such an important exercise. It's like training your body. In meditation, you're training your brain and you're training your very process of consciousness, which is a process of self-reflection. And you go into pure self-reflection mode in a meditation, and it makes certain parts of your brain, which are very important, grow. There's a lot of empirical evidence that your insular cortex, just by a simple mindfulness meditation, within a reasonable time is growing. And if you made it growing, it will never shrink. Therefore, in the new Healy Watch, we will include lots of meditation, mindfulness, and breathing exercises, which will actually help you on many different levels. And then you can measure with the HRV how much you improved. Of course, you can use the Coherence program as often as possible with your Healy to just protect your energetic system. It's very important. The Coherence creates order, and it makes your bioenergetic system stronger, more balanced, and harmonized. Another hint, I already talked about the great importance of water. Use the Healy to inform the water you are drinking. You can also inform your ingwer shot, but it already contains a lot of information. But pure water is just absorbing the information around. So you can use the Healy very well. The Healy with the coil, just put it on and place a glass of water on it. It holds perfect. But you can also use the Healy in such a way that you point it towards something. I can point toward my body, but I can also point it toward a glass of juice. So that's a very good way to use it. And now I just want to mention 3 more special use. One is an unofficial, a hint, and I have to think about it if I will say it in public also. And this tip is that you can use the coil actually also with the Heal Advisor Analysis app. What's the color of this app? I feared that you are talking about the app having different colors. Is this a pink or the blue dot app? I think it's a pink dot app, isn't it? Or how is it called? Somebody can tell me in the chat maybe.
We normally call it the pink dot.
Oh,
but
it's a pink.
Confirmed.
Oh, how you can point? It's very simple, because the quantum potential comes out in the center of the Healy, of the coil, in both directions around 12 centimeters. Oh, the people say it's a blue dot app. Okay, the pink dot app is the Healy app, and the blue dot app is, okay, blue dot. Yes, I trust our listeners, because we never had the idea to have this distinction. I find it beautiful just saying a blue dot app or the pink dot app. Okay, you can use it not only with the pink dot app, but also with the blue dot app. You can use it for analysis, yes, and you can also use it for optimization, because the quantum sensor is directly behind the Healy coil in the center of the Healy. So I would consider it to be kind of an amplifier to the quantum potential of the information field activity of the sensor. Yeah, and then there is this second hint is, yes, we can use it for animals, because animals don't like cables and they mess up with it, but you can place it in your head and your dog might lie about on it, but you can also place it at the neckband of your animal. It really works. Animals like it a lot. And the last idea which I want to give to you is also the space in which you are living is energetic. It has its own energetic field. It doesn't have an information field as a human being has, because it's not by nature a living entity, but something like an informational energetic field you find with each house, with each garden. Actually, mainly you and the inhabitants are contributing to this field. You're kind of borrowing it. So you can use the Healy coil, the Healy with the coil, to place it at certain points in your home to access the energy field of your home. And you can use chakra programs, you can use gold cycle programs. And if you want to know which points you can use for this kind of space acupuncture, you can go deeply into geomancy and find the right spots, but that's very difficult. I'm coming from this because I have written many books on Indian geomancy called Basado, but it's very easy. You can go to the center of your house, place it there, and run the program. You can experience the effect all over the house, or you can go to the northeast to your house. Take a compass, stand in the middle of your room or your house and look towards the northeast, find the northeast, and first check what do you have going on in your northeast. If it's garbage, take it away. If it's heavy rocks or heavy goods which you're storing there, take it away, open it, free it up, and place your Healy coil and run the energy program, run the program pure, and the energy space of your house will be very thankful to you. Oh, Krishnalaya, you were surprised to hear this, isn't it? So time is almost over. We have good news. 12 minutes is there. So I have seen so many questions popping up, so many questions. So I don't know in which sequence to answer them, because maybe, Gavin, you have chosen already a few of them. We will actually not forget any of your questions, all your reasonable questions.
Right, first question for you, Marcus. I've got them. Let's I'll leave this slide up here in the background, or would you I'll close the slideshow and put us both up.
Yes.
And I'll ask you some questions. The first question is
make us great again.
Right, I will make us great. Bigger and stronger than ever before. Here we go. Marcus, the first question, so you don't feel completely alone. The book that you referenced earlier by the Italian gentleman, I think Vincenzi, can you give the title and the details of the book, please? That was a very big question that came up.
I just type it. It's called My Double Unveiled. I put it into the
there you
chat.
Go.
My Double
Unveiled.
And Unveiled.
And
also is Giuseppe Vicello. It's a wonderful scientist. He has done a lot of work also. Okay, I misspelled him. Okay, I write again. Giuseppe. My Italian is not so good. Vicello. Wonderful author, and it's a beautiful book, and I hope you can still get it. Not that it's out of print.
I'm going to just scroll back up from some earlier questions. There were some more technical questions, and as much as I'd love to have attempted to answer them, I would much rather you did, because you've developed this product and started with the Healy coil since you were a baby. So there's a German one here from Bettina. Kann man die Hauptprogramme bei der Analyse-App aufschwingen? Ich habe gehört, die Frequenzen sind da nicht hinterlegt.
Genau. Can I answer in German or in English? Better in English.
I think you should answer Bettina auf Deutsch and then auf English.
the Healy, in the Healy Analysis app, the Healy Advisor Analysis app, you can analyze which Healy program to use. But you are supposed to use them in the Healy, not use to vibrate them, because, as you said, the frequencies are not there. So you will still have a benefit on the informational level from it, for sure. But the real benefit is if you use the frequencies. I know many people using it in such a way that they analyze it and then they directly use it with a blue dot app. That's not the intended use. The intended use is go back to the pink dot app and really apply the frequencies. Doesn't mean that you're not also having effect in the other way, but that's not the way how I wanted it to be used.
Great, thank you, Marcus. I hope that's answered your question, Bettina. Now we're going to go from a German question to an Italian lady, Serenella. How many programs a day can you use with the coil? More than just the 3 that we can run with cables? That's a very common question.
Yes, you can. I'm more a minimalist, so I like to use any 2 and 3 programs. But for example, if you have a special purpose like coherence or stay in a deeper or in a higher connection, then you can use it continuously. You can even run a sleep protection program over the whole night with the Healy coil.
Great. So that's you can use it as often as you want.
Because it really depends on what is your purpose. The analysis which you do with the Blue Dot app, with the resonance module, you don't normally do so often. I believe that if you do it once a week and then apply the same optimization list every day, that's sufficient. And after 1 week, you can do another analysis. So do it week by week. Doing it more often doesn't really make it better, because especially if you give this input on the very high, or let's say very deep level of the information field, your field needs some time to really answer or to integrate the information. So if you get one optimization list, for example, with some Bach flowers and some Anthony Pepler, psyche, homeopathics, they have such a potential to transform you on the unconscious or informational level that you should give them time. Otherwise, you can use, I think the I Ching is also there, isn't it, in the resonance module? This you can use as often as you have questions. But otherwise, use it once a week is enough. You know, if you feel after 2-3 days you should use it again, use it. But you don't need to use it much more often. Whereas the Healy program, it's good to have a daily use. Nuno Nina, for example, also is a minimalist. Sometimes he even leaves a day in between, not using, just for your body to integrating. So, but I like the daily use, the regular use of Healy every day, at least one program with the cables. And as we have the coil, at least one program with the coil, because in this way you cover all the 3 gaps. Once a day with the cable, once a day with the coil, and use the resonance module just every few days or once a week even is really sufficient. I'm even using it less often. Of course, I'm using for my informational field also the time waiver, but regularly, but once a week is sufficient.
Great. We've got a question from a gentleman called David, who could be Italian, to continue our theme, but he could be from anywhere. Does the coil make it safe to use the microcurrent programs for people with pacemakers, metal in the body, epilepsy, pregnant women? I would say for multiple conditions, all the contraindicators we see for using the microcurrent. This question's been asked quite frequently, actually.
I have a very clear answer to this, but before officially giving it in such an important place, I will consult our security officer, our quality management officer, and our CPO and our legal advisor. And then I will give it to every one of you, because I know the answer for myself, but I want to make sure, because it's contraindications is such a sensitive issue. And I want to be absolutely precise on it. And I'm sorry that I'm not prepared for this question. But now as it is asked, I'm sure it needs its care. And those questions,
Marcus, I asked it to get that exact response, because we would never just stand up here and make any claims of any kind.
This is a issue of legal importance, and therefore, it's clear. So we will definitely make sure, Gavin personally, make sure that you will get the answer on this question after I've clarified. I think tomorrow it's already there.
Marcus, you've just hidden yourself from us, from the public.
I've seen.
We need to bring you back on. I think you just need to press your video button again. The top, the one with the circular face.
No, Gavin, it's as another reason. It tells me that my connection seems to be low at the moment. Probably my children started to stream some YouTube videos.
Okay, someone has asked, what are the best programs with the coil?
There is, whatever are the best programs for the Healy is the best programs for the coil. So there is no specific program for this. I especially love coherence because this is such a strong basis for my bioenergetic field, but otherwise there's no difference to the Healy. So my favorite programs are balance and pure and being. So it's the same for the Healy coil.
And I think I'm just trying to see if there's another quick question that we can do, that we can give a quick answer to. I'm just trying to see. 4-hour remote session.
That's a good question. Is there an up or down when pointing the Healy at foot or water? No, it's not. It's symmetric. Doesn't matter.
Perfect.
There's so many good questions.
Yes, and what we will do, and you had a really good idea. We'll take all of the other questions, and for those of you that have qualified for this call, Marcus has offered to record a special video message to respond to all the questions that we've got. So,
yes, for example, here was a question: paint program with the coil. I say no, because the paint program are certified in have a medical an object of our medical certification. So if you use them as paint programs, use them always with the cables. Of course, you can try whatever you want, but that's not it's not designed for this purpose.
Great. Marcus, on behalf of everybody on this call, I'd like to thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to see you speaking for more than 15 minutes, because the mode and the mindset difference, as you can see, and the passion and the energy that you go into your subject, which is your life's work as well. The comments that I've been reading in between trying to answer the questions as well echoes the sentiment that I'm passing on, really, from the people that are on this call to you. I think it's a huge thank you. Thank you for being so passionate. I'm trying to sum up what I've seen on the call. Thank you for sharing everything with us. Thank you for blinding us with the science, because some people are completely overwhelmed with what they've received today, which is also wonderful to hear about. But I think in short, thank you for the Healy coil is what I'm picking up on from everybody here today. So thank you all very much indeed. I'm going to bring this to a close just by running the video of the coil, of the Healy coil. It is going to be available for general sale from June the 1st, but I would suggest that you tune into Frequency Friday as well. Marcus will be doing a much, much shorter version of the Healy coil information seminar, let's call it. But for all of you that have worked so hard, I hope you've enjoyed this. We hope you've enjoyed this. Please tell all the people that didn't qualify what they've missed out on, because that's how you will grow your Healy Build business as well. When people miss out, they have a fear of missing out. It's actually a thing nowadays. They call it FOMO, fear of missing out. And this is something that if you want to grow your business with, teach other people how to qualify the way you did, because you're all success stories here tonight. And if you can inspire more people to come onto these calls and they learn the amount of new information that Marcus has shared, believe me, the effect becomes exponential. So thank you all very much. We're going to end on this video now. And thank you all for your time, energy, hard work, and a big thank you to Marcus for superb training tonight.
Thank you again. Thank everyone.